Before a young leader ever gets on a plane, before they, raise a single dollar of support, there's this quiet question just waiting for them. And honestly, it's kind of a terrifying one.
It is. It's the question that I think most people avoid until it's way too late.
What happens when your passion meets a world that doesn't work the way you expected?
And that's the cliff edge right there.
Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we are wrestling with a really specific, really challenging set of sources. It's all centered on a guide called Building Practical Foundations.
Right.
And on the surface, this is a manual for, say, young missionaries or NGO workers, people going into cross-cultural fields. But as I was reading it, I just kept thinking this is not just for people crossing oceans.
No, not at all.
This is for anyone who wants to help people without accidentally being a jerk about it.
I mean, that's a blunt way to put it, but yeah.
Yeah.
The core conflict we're looking at today is this uncomfortable truth. We're all sort of culturally conditioned to believe that good intentions automatically equal good outcomes.
Right. If your heart is big enough, the logistics will just sort themselves out.
And the sources today are basically just screaming, no, they won't.
It really won't.
Exactly. In fact, that untrained enthusiasm, that raw, unguided passion can cause massive harm. We're talking burnout, creating dependency, accidentally offending the very people you're trying to love.
So the mission for this deep dive is really to figure out how to bridge that gap between wanting to help and, actually being competent.
It's a big gap.
It's a huge gap. So let's start with the bad news. The source material makes a pretty aggressive claim right at the start. It says passion has a short shelf life. That feels a little cynical, doesn't it?
It does feel cynical, but it's really just physics.
Yeah.
I mean, think about the stressors of a cross-cultural environment. You're dealing with a language you process at the level of a toddler.
Yeah.
You're navigating complex cultural hierarchies you can't even see. Maybe the health system is fragile, the political situation is tense.
It's a total pressure cooker.
Right. And passion is like a sugar rush. It provides that initial burst of energy, but it has no nutritional density. When you hit that wall of stress, passion just burns off.
Yeah.
Instantly.
And if that's the only fuel you have.
You crash.
The text draws this distinction between wanting to help and helping well. And there's a line that really, really stuck with me. It said, the global field doesn't break people because they care too little. It breaks them because they were never equipped to translate that care into competence.
That's the whole hidden cost.
Yeah.
When you skip the basics, you end up with workers who are operationally fragile. They might be the nicest people on earth, but they misread everything.
Everything.
They reinforce dependency because they don't know how to build systems. And eventually they leave, feeling like failures.
And worse, the community they left might actually be worse off than before they ever showed up.
Often, yes. Because broken promises are projects that get started and then just stopped. They leave scars.
Okay, but let me play devil's advocate for a second. Especially in, religious or humanitarian circles, isn't there this idea that faith or urgency should cover the gap?
Oh, yeah.
Like, if I stop to prepare for 4 years, I'm delaying the mission, people are in need now, isn't immediate obedience the goal?
That is the most common pushback. People are dying. Why am I studying grammar?
Yeah.
But the source material counters that with this really interesting historical and theological reality check.
Yeah.
It basically argues that God rarely sends unformed people.
So that impulsive missionary archetype isn't really the standard.
Not at all. Look at the heavy hitters in the texts. Take Moses. He didn't just walk out of Egypt and start leading people.
No.
He spent 40 years in Pharaoh's court learning the high-level legal and political systems of a superpower. Then he spent another 40 years shepherding in the desert of Midian.
Just waiting?
Well, learning.
Yeah.
Learning humility, endurance, geography.
Yeah.
The man was 80 years old before he even started his main job.
80.
Or look at the Apostle Paul. He didn't convert and then start planting churches the next Tuesday. He spent years in Arabia and Tarsus. Even Jesus, and this is the ultimate example the text uses, he lived 30 years of a private, normal life for just 3 years of public ministry.
That's a 10-to-1 ratio of preparation to execution.
Exactly. So the argument here is that preparation isn't the lack of faith. Preparation is the obedience. It's respecting the people you serve enough to actually get good at what you do before you arrive.
It's like a surgeon.
It is. If a surgeon takes 10 years to learn how to cut, it's not because he doesn't care about the patient. It's because he cares enough not to kill them.
Okay, that is a fair point. So if we accept that we need to be competent, not just enthusiastic, what does that actually look like? The guide lays out these practical pillars. The first one is language acquisition. Now, I heard in Spanish class in high school, is this just about memorizing flashcards so you can buy bread?
It's a lot more than buying bread. The text actually reframes language learning as a theological discipline.
A theological discipline? That sounds heavy. Break that down for me.
It all comes down to power dynamics. So imagine you go to a village to help, and you rely on a translator. Who holds all the power in that conversation?
I guess. I do. Or maybe the translator.
You do, because everyone else has to wait for you. They have to simplify their thoughts
Hmm.
to fit through this one channel. You are the center of gravity in the room.
Right.
But when you commit to learning their language, you voluntarily give up that power. You become a child again.
He sounds stupid.
You sound incredibly stupid. You stumble, you use the wrong word, you look foolish, and that levels the playing field. The source calls it love made audible. You're basically saying, I am willing to be weak so that I can understand you.
I like that, but isn't the goal just communication? I mean, does it matter how we get there?
Well, there's this fascinating comparison the author makes between the Tower of Babel and Pentecost. You remember the story of Babel?
Vaguely. They built a tower, God got mad, mixed up all the languages.
Right. At Babel, language was used to divide people. It was about fragmentation. But if you fast forward to Pentecost, in the New Testament, the Holy Spirit comes down to the early church. And what happens?
Everyone starts speaking different languages, right?
But catch the nuance here. They didn't all suddenly speak one new language. They didn't all just switch to Greek or Aramaic or whatever.
Oh, right.
The miracle was that everyone in the crowd heard the truth in their own mother tongue.
So the diversity was actually preserved.
Precisely. God met them in their specific cultural context.
Mm-hmm.
So the argument is, when a worker sweats through learning some difficult dialect, they are mimicking that divine move. They're saying, I value your culture enough to enter it on your terms, not mine.
That requires a serious suppression of ego,
Right.
which leads to this exercise the text recommends. And I have to say, it sounds excruciating for a type A personality, the discipline of silence.
Oh, the 1 week of intentional listening.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The idea is you go into a new setting and you are literally forbidden from fixing anything or offering any advice for a whole week. You just journal.
There's a story mentioned of a young volunteer, very bright, very eager. She was speaking through translators, organizing things, trying to, optimize the workflow of this local clinic.
Sure.
And an elder took her aside and very gently said, you speak well, but you have not yet listened.
Ouch. That stings.
It stings because it's true. If you haven't listened, you're just solving problems that exist in your own head, not in their reality. You're fixing things that might not be broken, and you're totally ignoring the things that are.
And that misinterpretation is the core of the next pillar, cultural intelligence, or CQ.
Right. And CQ isn't just knowing facts about a country, like their exports or capital city. It's the ability to interpret behavior through their framework, not yours.
Okay, give me a concrete example of where this goes wrong, because we all think we're open-minded until we get annoyed.
Take silence again. In a standard Western business meeting, if I pitch an idea and you just sit there staring at me for 45 seconds, what am I thinking?
I'm thinking, I hate the idea. Or I've completely zoned out. It's so awkward. I'd probably start talking just to make it stop.
Right. You panic. You start negotiating against yourself. But in many cultures, parts of East Asia, or many indigenous contexts, that silence is a high compliment. It means your words were weighty enough that I actually need to chew on them.
So by jumping in to fill the silence, I'm actually interrupting their process of showing respect.
Exactly. You're being rude by trying to be polite. Or take indirect communication. If you ask a direct question and you get this vague, wandering answer, a Westerner might think, they're being dishonest, they're hiding something.
Yeah, totally.
But in an honor-shame culture, that indirectness is about preserving the relationship. They're trying to avoid shaming you with a direct no.
So how do we stop our brains from just jumping to the wrong conclusion? Because that judgment happens instantly. He's lying, or she's ignoring me.
The source offers a tool for this. It's called interpretive charity.
Interpretive charity. It sounds like a tax write-off.
It's a mental discipline. When you see a behavior that is confusing or frustrating, you stop and you ask yourself, what is the most generous possible interpretation of what just happened? You assume the best until you're proven otherwise.
So instead of they are rude, I force myself to think maybe they're honoring a protocol I just don't see.
Yes, because the stakes here are so high, the text warns us about confusing gospel essentials with cultural expressions. We have a really bad history of this.
You're talking about colonization.
I am. There was a time when Western missionaries just assumed that to be Christian meant you had to dress like a European, sing over an organ, and organize your meetings like a British parliament.
It's identity erasure.
Exactly.
Mm.
And that is a failure of cultural intelligence. You have to be able to separate the core truth, justice, love, redemption from its cultural wrapper. If you don't, you aren't spreading faith, you're just spreading your own culture.
This brings us to the segment that I think will resonate most with anyone who has ever done charity work or even just volunteered at a food bank. Helping without hurting.
Ah, the dependency trap.
There's a story in the notes about a water system. I feel like I've heard variations of the story 1,000 times, but walk us through the specific one because it's just tragic in how preventable it was.
It's the classic example of needs-based thinking gone wrong.
Hmm.
A team visits a remote village. They see women walking miles for water. They think, we have money, we have engineers, let's fix this.
Right.
They drill a well, they install an electric pump, they high-five each other, take a bunch of photos, and they fly home.
Mission accomplished.
For about 6 months. Then a seal breaks on the pump. It's a $2 part.
Yeah.
But the village doesn't have the part. They don't have the specialized wrench to open the casing. And nobody was trained on how the thing actually works because the experts did it all themselves to be efficient.
So the pump just sits there.
It becomes a rusted monument to good intentions. And it's worse than that, because during those 6 months, the old path to the river grew over. The whole social structure of gathering water fell apart. You haven't just failed to help, you've left them with a broken piece of junk and a sense of helplessness.
That is just heartbreaking. So how do you flip that? Because obviously they did need water. The source talks about asset-based community development.
ABCD. It's a complete mindset shift. The deficit mindset walks in and asks, what is wrong with you people? What are you missing? It treats people like beggars or victims.
And the asset mindset.
The asset mindset asks, what has God already placed here? What are you good at? Maybe there are local artisans. Maybe there is a strong tradition of storytelling. Maybe there is a grandmother who already organizes the neighborhood.
So you build on what's already there instead of just importing what isn't.
Yes. The goal is empowerment, not charity. You want local ownership. The source points to Paul again. He was a tent maker. He didn't just sponge off the people. He created value. He had a trade. That kind of entrepreneurial thinking is vital. You want to work with, not for.
It sounds so much slower, though. Identifying assets takes a lot longer than just writing a check for a pump.
It is much slower. But one lasts and the other rusts.
Okay, we have to pivot to something a bit darker. We've talked about language, culture, development, but the reality is a lot of this work happens in dangerous places. Segment 5 deals with risk.
Sober courage.
I feel like there's such a thin line between faith and stupidity, and I've definitely seen people cross it. How does the source draw that line?
It is a very thin line. The source distinguishes between what it calls faithful risk and foolish exposure.
That's the difference, because to a skeptical outsider, going into a war zone might always look foolish.
Faithful risk is calculated, it's consulted, you know the political situation, you have a support network, you are taking precautions, you're risking your safety for a clear, necessary purpose, and you're doing it in community.
And foolish exposure.
That's the God will protect me attitude while you ignore the local advice, drink the unfiltered water because you have faith, and walk into a hostile zone without any plan. The text quotes a proverb. The prudent see danger and take refuge, but the simple keep going and pay the penalty.
So prudence isn't a lack of faith.
No, it's a form of wisdom. And this links directly to adaptive thinking. Westerners, and I am so guilty of this, we love a linear plan. You know, step A leads to step B leads to step C.
The Gantt chart approach to life.
Exactly. But in a crisis zone, or just in a relational culture, A rarely leads to B. The power goes out. The permit gets denied. The person you need to meet is sick.
So if you're rigid, you snap.
You break. You have to be able to pause, pray, and consult. The source emphasizes consultation over and over again. When things go wrong, don't just try to power through. Ask the locals. They know how to survive there. You don't.
That humility seems to be the theme of this entire document, which leads to the final pillar, relational intelligence. The text argues that relationships are literally the currency of this work.
Trust as currency. That's the phrase it uses. You can't buy influence. You can't demand it with a title or a degree. You earn it by showing up, by drinking the tea, by honoring the elders.
And this changes how you measure success. This was the part that hit me hardest. Stories over statistics.
Oh, this is the bane of every nonprofit, the donor report.
Right. You want to say, we reached 5,000 people this month. It looks great on a PDF. It makes you feel like you're winning.
But it's often a lie, or at least it's not the whole truth. The source suggests we need to measure long-term transformation, which is much, much harder to count.
There was the hygiene story that illustrated this so well.
Yes. A health team goes in to teach basic hygiene, hand washing, sanitation. They hold a workshop. Attendance is abysmal.
Yeah.
Maybe 5 women show up.
Statistically, a total failure. If I'm the donor, I'm saying, why did I pay for this?
Exactly, a flop. But the story goes that one of those women, a matriarch in her family, she took it seriously. She changed her kitchen. Her neighbors noticed her kids weren't getting sick as often. They asked her why. Then the local teacher noticed and asked her to come speak at the school.
So the ripple effect was massive.
Huge. It changed the hygiene standards of the whole village over 2 years. But if you only counted heads in the room on day 1, you would have fired that team. We have to be patient enough to value the slow work of transformation over the quick hit of attendance numbers.
It's focusing on the root, not just the fruit.
Or at least realizing that fruit takes a really long time to grow.
And the guide wraps up with this concept of commissioning, basically saying that getting on the plane isn't the finish line.
It's barely the starting line. It talks about a formation cycle. You need ascending community mentors, people who will hold you accountable, people who will check on your mental health. You aren't a finished product. You're a student enrolling in a very, very hard school.
So if we zoom all the way out, we started with that really uncomfortable question. What happens when passion meets reality?
And the answer seems to be passion dies, but competence sustains.
It's the long obedience.
It is. The uncomfortable truth is that loving people isn't just a feeling, it's work. It's the hard work of silencing your own voice so you can hear theirs. It's the hard work of learning grammar so you can speak to their heart. It's the hard work of letting them lead even when you think you know better.
It's certainly not the movie version of mission work, is it? There's no montage where everything gets fixed in 3 minutes.
No. But it's the version that actually lasts.
I want to leave our listeners with the final challenge from the text. It asks this: what if the leaders who last are not the most gifted, but the most teachable? Not the loudest voices, but the most adaptable servants.
That's the question that changes everything.
It really does. So for you listening, whether you are crossing an ocean or just trying to help a neighbor without making it about you, maybe think about where you might need to apply some of that interpretive charity today.
Assume the best and listen first.
Words to live by. Thanks for diving deep with us.
Always a pleasure.